The night you left him here, Denise, do you know what your son did? He sat by the front door with his shoes on. He waited through dinner. He waited through his bedtime. He waited until midnight. And when I picked him up off that floor and carried him to bed, he looked at me and he said, "Did I do something wrong?" I was standing behind Lorna, and I could feel the memory in my chest. I remembered the shoes. I remembered not wanting to take them off because if Denise came back and I didn't have my shoes on, we might not be able to leave fast enough. Lorna kept going. She looked at Jean. "I never told him a single bad thing about either of you. Every time he asked, every time he cried because other kids had parents at the school play and he didn't, I could have told him the truth, but I didn't. For 20 years, I protected your names in that boy's mouth so he wouldn't grow up with poison in his heart." She paused and looked around her own dining room, the room in the house I bought her, the room she was standing in for the first time as a homeowner at 72 years old. "I gave you both grace you didn't earn, and this is what you do with it. You come into my house and fight over who hurt him better." The room went completely quiet. Not the kind of quiet where people are just waiting to talk. The kind of quiet where nobody can breathe right. I could hear the clock on the wall above the stove. Two of Lorna's friends from the library were standing near the hallway. They had come in to get something and they heard everything. One of them had her hand over her mouth. The other one was just looking at the floor, shaking her head slowly. Denise's chin started to shake and her eyes filled up. For one real moment, it looked like something true was breaking through. Not the performance she usually gave. Something deeper. Something that had been buried under all those years of excuses and rewritten stories. She stepped toward Lorna and her voice came out small and broken. "Mom, I never meant to." Her voice cracked right in the middle and she pressed her lips together like she was trying to hold something in. Jean was looking at the floor. His arms were at his sides and for once, he didn't have some smart comment ready. I let myself hope. 5 seconds. That's how long it lasted. Then she finished the sentence. She took a breath, wiped her eyes with the back of her hand and said, "I never meant for you to have to do it alone, but you have to admit, I made the right call leaving him with you. Look at him." She turned and pointed at me like I was a science project that got first place. Like I was the proof she'd been looking for this whole time. The tears were still wet on her face, but they weren't tears of guilt. They were props. She cried just long enough to seem human, and then she turned those tears into evidence that she was right all along. Jean jumped right in like he had been waiting for his turn. At least I didn't pretend it was some noble decision. I left. I own that. But he's got my blood, and that's not something you can teach. He pointed at me the same way Denise just had. Two parents, both pointing at me like I was something they built from a distance. He looked at Lorna. "You think that drive came from shelving library books? Come on." He said it like it was a joke. Like Lorna's 30 years of showing up every single day was cute, but not serious. Like the real reason I became who I am was hiding in his DNA somewhere, just waiting to kick in. I told everyone to step outside. The other guests moved toward the front door without me having to ask twice. They could feel it. I closed the door behind the last one and turned around. Denise was leaning against the counter with her arms crossed. Jean was standing by the fridge like he was waiting for a meeting to start. Lorna was at the dining table with her hands flat on the surface. Neither of them was going to apologize tonight. They turned on each other instead. Jean blamed Denise for being a bad mother. Denise blamed Jean for checking out a year before he walked out the door. They went back and forth, dragging up stuff from 20 years ago that had nothing to do with me and everything to do with them. That's when I understood. They weren't fighting over me because they loved me. They were fighting over me because I was the proof, the trophy. Whoever could claim credit for how I turned out got to tell themselves their version of the story was the right one. I was a scoreboard. I called my best friend Dennis that night. Dennis had known the full version of my story since freshman year of college. The garbage bag of clothes, the shoes by the door, the birthday cards that stopped coming. He listened the whole way through. When I finished, he said, "You already know what you need to do. Cut them both off. Clean." I